A Finnish commando named Korpi is at the far edges of Lapland with his horse and his dog. Korpi has grown tired of the life of war and decides to search for gold, knowing this region is famous for it. Korpi spends long days digging and prospecting, until one day, he finds a small piece of gold. He is overjoyed, realizing he is on the verge of discovering a treasure. After many long days, Korpi uncovers a massive amount of gold. He lets out a scream of victory, unable to believe his eyes from sheer happiness. He then breaks the gold into smaller pieces so he can carry it. The next morning, Korpi packs all the gold into his bags and onto his horse. He mounts his horse, with his dog walking behind him, and begins his journey to reach the city of Helsinki so he can sell his gold. The next day, Korpi encounters a German army platoon led by Colonel Bruno, with Bruno, his subordinate named Wolf, and Corporal Schitz, the tank driver. They also have a group of female captives with them. Korpi rides past them quietly. Wolf steps down from the captives' truck after assaulting one of them, climbs onto the tank, grabs his rifle, and prepares to kill Korpi. However, Bruno stops him, saying that this man is already walking toward his own death. Bruno gives the order for the platoon to continue on their way, and Korpi continues on his as well. A short while later, Korpi sees the corpses of many people killed by Bruno's forces, their bodies hung from the lampposts along the road. Next, Korpi finds himself facing a group of German soldiers and their commander. The commander orders Korpi to get down from his horse and instructs his men to search everything on it. One of the soldiers finds Korpi's bag of gold and tells his comrades that they are now rich. The commander smiles maliciously and orders Korpi to get on his knees, but Korpi gives a command to his dog to escape. The dog runs fast, and one of the soldiers shoots at it, but the dog darts between the rocks and the soldier misses. At that exact moment, Bruno is on his tank and hears the gunshots. He assumes Korpi has been killed. But in reality, Korpi pulls out a dagger and strikes the German commander right in the head. One of the soldiers attacks Korpi with his rifle to kill him, but Korpi pushes the rifle barrel away from his body, and all the bullets fire into the ground. Korpi breaks the soldier's leg, leaving him screaming in agony. He then approaches the third soldier, kicks him to the ground, grabs a helmet, and bludgeons the soldier in the head until he dies. He takes the German soldier's rifle and slings it over his shoulder. At the same moment, the soldier with the broken leg attacks Korpi, but Korpi quickly and skillfully spins around, shoots the soldier, and blows his head off. Afterward, he takes his horse and leaves the area. Meanwhile, Bruno grows concerned when he hears the gunfire again and decides to go back to see what is happening. When Bruno and his forces arrive, they are shocked to see the dead bodies of the soldiers and their commander. Bruno spots a piece of gold in the pocket of one of the dead soldiers. He approaches, picks it up, and deduces that Korpi is the one carrying the gold. Bruno decides to go after Korpi to eliminate him and take his gold. A short while later, Bruno spots Korpi on the road and orders his men to open fire. But Korpi rides his horse at full speed, managing to dodge the bullets. He continues his escape from Bruno's tank until he reaches a minefield. Korpi's horse steps on a mine, causing a massive explosion. Through his binoculars, Bruno sees what happened and smiles, thinking Korpi is finally dead. The chase is over, and he will easily take the gold. But he doesn't know that Korpi's horse took the brunt of the explosion, and Korpi is still alive, though injured. Korpi manages to stand up, quickly gathering his strength. He sees the pieces of gold scattered all around him on the ground, so he quickly grabs his bag and collects them one by one. As Bruno's platoon approaches, Wolf prepares to shoot Korpi, but Bruno stops him, telling him to wait until Korpi gathers all the gold. Bruno watches intently until Korpi finishes packing his bag. Korpi then stands facing Bruno, his eyes full of defiance. Bruno finally orders his subordinate Wolf to kill Korpi, but Korpi throws a rock at a mine between himself and Bruno's forces. A massive explosion erupts, kicking up thick dust that blocks their vision. Bruno orders his soldiers to fire blindly in Korpi's direction. Korpi grabs the gold panning tray, using it as a shield to protect himself from the bullets, and takes very careful, calculated steps backward through the minefield. Bruno then orders one of his soldiers to walk into the minefield to confirm Korpi is dead, but they are surprised when a mine falls right on the soldier's head and explodes. Now certain Corpi is still alive, Bruno orders 2 of his soldiers to walk along the edges of the area to avoid the mines. The soldiers run quickly, but the edges of the road are also mine. They step on them and both blow up. When the dust settles, Bruno discovers Corpi has managed to escape. By chance, Bruno finds a military dog tag with Corpi's ID number. He takes it and orders the platoon to move. Bruno tells Wolf to grab 2 of the captive girls and tie them with a rope, forcing them to walk in front of the troops so that if there are any mines on the road, they will blow up the girls instead. Later, Bruno is inside the tank and tells Wolf to use the radio to ask command about Corpi using his military number. The reply comes back, Corpi is a legend in the Finnish army. He was one of the most terrifying commandos who fought in the Finnish war against the Soviet Union. The Soviets killed his entire family, but Corpi managed to take revenge, killing over 300 Russian soldiers. Since then, Corpi transformed into a merciless, vengeful soldier who refuses to take orders from his superiors. When the Finnish army failed to control him, they decided to send him to Lapland to face the Russian patrols all by himself. Therefore, command strictly orders Bruno not to engage with Corpi under any circumstances, and to continue retreating with his forces back to headquarters immediately. Despite all this information and the warnings, Bruno insists on continuing the hunt for Corpi. Wolf is baffled by Bruno's decision, but Bruno explains that the gold Corpi has is their only lifeline. Bruno knows the war is ending, the Germans will lose, and if they return to command, they will be executed for failing their duties. But if they seize Corpi's gold, they will find plenty of ways to escape their commander's judgment. Meanwhile, Corpi reaches a burned-out truck. He crawls underneath to hide, grabs his knife, and digs a bullet out of his body, pouring dirt over the wound. Overcome by intense pain, Corpi falls asleep. Suddenly, Corpi's dog appears and stands guard in front of him. A little while later, Bruno's forces arrive and approach his location. The dog barks loudly, waking Corpi up. Corpi sees Bruno's troops coming toward him with trained German Shepherd dogs. He waits until one of their vehicles is close, moves quickly, and clings to the underside of the moving truck. Corpi takes out his knife and punctures the gas tank, drenching himself in gasoline so the dogs can't catch his scent. However, one of the soldiers notices the gas leaking from the truck onto the road. Bruno orders the platoon to halt to inspect the leak. Corpi rolls out from under the truck and sprints away as fast as he can. Wolf spots him and fires a shot that hits Corpi in the leg, but Corpi fights through the pain and keeps running. Bruno orders the dogs to be released after him. Corpi then sets his gasoline-soaked clothes on fire. Bruno orders his men to attack, but Corpi sprints toward the river and dives into the water. Bruno and his soldiers reach the riverbank and stand waiting for Corpi to surface so they can kill him. But Corpi manages to hold his breath underwater for a very long time. Eventually, he breaches the surface with lightning speed, takes a breath, and dives back down as the soldiers open fire. Bruno and his men see blood on the water's surface and assume Corpi is dead. Bruno orders 3 soldiers to get into a boat and go into the river to retrieve the gold from underwater. The first soldier gets into the water, but Corpi appears and kills him. Bruno sees blood rising to the surface and orders the second soldier into the water after his comrade. Once he's in, more blood appears. The third soldier, suddenly shocked as Corpi rises to the surface, uses the boat's rope and pulls the boat to the other side of the river. To Bruno, it looks like the third soldier is trying to desert, so he deems him a traitor and orders Wolf to kill him. After Wolf shoots the soldier, Bruno realizes was Corpi's trick, watching him climb out onto the opposite riverbank. Wolf runs to the tank, uses its machine gun, and fires at Corpi, but Corpi uses the dead soldier's body as a meat shield against the bullets and quickly escapes. At this point, Bruno feels he has completely lost hope of getting the gold. But suddenly, Corpi's dog appears and starts barking toward the other side of the river. Bruno realizes it's Corpi's dog and orders his men to quickly prep another boat for him. By nightfall, Corpi reaches one of the Finnish cities, only to be shocked to find it burned to the ground. He continues his escape route until he finds a destroyed gas station. He goes inside to hide and surrenders to sleep. Some time later, Korpi wakes up to the sound of his dog barking. He rushes out of the gas station looking for him. The dog appears and runs quickly toward him, but Korpi is horrified to see dynamite strapped to the dog's body, seconds away from detonating. Korpi rapidly unties the dynamite from the dog and throws it far away, but it explodes close to them. The force of the blast sends Korpi and the dog flying through the air, crashing hard into the ground. Bruno appears, accompanied by Wolf and Schitz the tank driver. They grab Korpi and hang him by the neck with a rope from a wooden pole outside the gas station. They stand and wait until they are absolutely certain he is dead. Bruno then walks up to Korpi's body, places a piece of gold in his pocket, tells him this is the reward for his hard work, grabs the bag of gold, and leaves. Shortly after, we discover that Korpi is still alive and managed to trick Bruno and his soldiers into thinking he was dead. Korpi moves his leg and wedges it into an iron rebar protruding from the pole, using it to support his body weight so his neck won't snap. He stays in this agonizing position until morning. Suddenly, a military plane lands on the ground right next to the gas station. The massive air pressure from the plane snaps the wooden pole Korpi is hanging from, and he falls to the ground. Two pilots emerge looking for fuel for the plane. One of them walks toward Korpi and realizes he's still alive. The pilot pulls out his gun to shoot Korpi, but Korpi strikes him in the leg. The pilot falls, hits his head on a rock, and dies. A little while later, the second pilot gets worried about his missing partner and goes looking for him, only to be shocked to find him dead. Korpi suddenly appears and smashes a rock into the pilot's head. The pilot collapses to the ground, unconscious. When the pilot wakes up, he finds himself tied to the wooden pole. He watches in absolute terror as Korpi pulls bullets and shrapnel out of his own body, uses a metal wire to stitch up his wounds, and disinfects them with gasoline. Once Korpi finishes treating all his injuries, he grabs the pilot, boards the plane, and leaves his dog behind. Meanwhile, Bruno is in his tank when Schitz informs him that their getaway plane is ready and waiting for them. Bruno orders them to move toward its location. However, they find a crashed plane blocking the road. Wolf and Schitz get out, walk toward the wreckage, and are stunned to find a dead pilot tied up with the exact same rope they used to hang Korpi. Bruno is paralyzed with fear, realizing Korpi is still alive and coming for revenge. He orders the entire force to move out immediately. In the truck holding the captive girls, the soldiers are confused by the sudden panic. One of the girls, Aino, smiles and tells them she knows exactly who is hunting them, and they are fools if they think they can get rid of him. She tells them he is a legendary warrior and everyone knows the stories of his victories over the Russians during the war. Suddenly, one of the soldiers drops dead from an unknown bullet. His comrade steps out of the truck to see who shot him. Korpi appears, knocks the soldier to the ground, and the soldier is crushed under the treads of the tank. Korpi breaches the girls' truck, hands out weapons to them, climbs onto the roof, kills the driver with a dagger to the head, and throws his body out of the vehicle just as Aino slides into the driver's seat and takes control. Aino slams on the brakes to get closer to the tank, allowing Korpi to leap onto it undetected. One of the captive girls grabs the dead soldier's hand and waves it at the men in the tank to make them think everything is fine. Aino then drives the truck right next to the soldier's vehicle, and the girls emerge, opening fire and killing every soldier on board. Meanwhile, Korpi uses a pickaxe to try and smash open the tank hatch. Bruno orders Schitz to hit the brakes. The tank stops abruptly, throwing Korpi off. Wolf climbs out and shoots at Korpi, but Korpi flanks him from the other side. They engage in brutal hand-to-hand combat and both fall off the tank. Bruno orders Schitz to drive away at maximum speed. Korpi overpowers Wolf, beating him mercilessly to the ground. Wolf begs for his life. Two German soldiers arrive on a military motorcycle, and Wolf screams then to save him from the Finnish soldier. But the two soldiers remember the trail of mangled corpses they saw on their way here. Terrified by Korpi's demonic appearance, they drop their weapons and flee. Korpi takes the motorcycle and chases after Bruno's tank. Then, the group of armed girls approaches. Wolf is terrified as he sees them coming toward him, ready to exact their bloody revenge for everything he did to them. At this point, Bruno arrives with his tank at the location of their escape plane. Bruno and Schitz step out of the tank and meet the pilot. Suddenly, Bruno pulls out his gun and executes shit so he can keep all the gold for himself. Bruno boards the plane with the pilot, and the aircraft begins to taxi. Suddenly, Corpy appears right in front of them on the motorcycle, firing his weapon. A bullet hits the pilot in the neck. Corpy speeds directly underneath the plane, embeds his pickaxe into the fuselage, and clings to the front landing gear as the plane takes to the sky. Bruno looks down, sees the abandoned motorcycle, and believes he has finally escaped Corpy. But Corpy uses all his skills to navigate toward the plane's rear landing gear and hangs on. He uses the pickaxe to violently hack into the plane's underbelly, tearing a hole in it. Bruno hears the sound of the pickaxe strikes, grabs his rifle, and leaves the cockpit to investigate. He is shocked when Corpy hurls the pickaxe right at him, knocking the rifle out of his hands. Corpy lunges at Bruno, and a vicious fight breaks out. Bruno gains the upper hand, wraps a leather belt around his fist, and delivers devastating punches, forcing Corpy back until he is right next to a bomb store in the plane. Corpy grabs the belt wrapped around Bruno's hand, ties it to the bomb, and violently pulls the bomb bay release lever. The bomb drops out of the plane, dragging Bruno with it all the way to the ground, where it detonates. Corpy then realizes the pilot has lost control of the aircraft. He rushes to the cockpit only to find the injured pilot has died. Corpy runs back, frantically searching for a parachute to jump, but finds none. So, Corpy straps the bag of gold to his body, ties himself tightly to the cargo straps inside the fuselage, and braces for impact. The plane violently crashes into the earth, sinking into a muddy swamp. Some time later, Corpy emerges from the wreckage holding the bag of gold. A few days later, Corpy arrives at a bank in the city of Helsinki with his dog. He walks into the bank to sell his gold, and the first part of the film ends. Before we continue, we move on to the Did You Know segment. Did you know, my friend, that over 80% of video viewers don't subscribe to the channel? And did you know that the like rate on videos doesn't exceed 10%? Scientists haven't been able to explain this. Honestly, it's strange to enjoy a video without liking it or subscribing to the channel. Since you've made it this far, it means you enjoyed the video, so you should subscribe to receive all the latest updates. I think that's the logical and rational thing to do. Without further ado, let's continue with the exciting dose. We see Corpy stopping his truck at the border, where he shows his passport to a Soviet soldier. After the soldier inspects the vehicle, he allows Corpy to cross. The next day, Corpy arrives at his house with his dog. It becomes clear that Corpy is deeply traumatized by the death of his family. He finds a picture of himself with his wife and children, and overwhelmed by grief, he cannot hold back his tears. Even though Corpy has become a wealthy man after finding the gold in Lapland, he meticulously dismantles his entire house, loads the timber onto his truck, and decides to rebuild his home inside Finland as a tribute to his family. We cut to a prison cell in Siberia, where a former general named Igor is locked up. Igor is surprised when guards take him out of his cell to meet an intelligence officer named Prick. Prick tells Igor that he and his men killed a woman and her two children, only to find out they were the family of a Finnish commando named Corpy. Because of what they did, Corpy sought revenge and slaughter over 300 Soviet soldiers, becoming a mythic legend everyone talks about. They now have intelligence that Corpy crossed into Soviet territory 10 hours ago. Prick asks Igor to go and kill Corpy, promising him his freedom from prison and enough money to start a new life. Igor agrees without a moment of hesitation. The next day, Corpy is driving his truck, heading toward the border to return to Finland. While on the road, he finds two Soviet soldiers blocking his path with their car. At the same time, Corpy notices another car approaching them. One of the soldiers walks up and asks for his papers. Corpy hands him his passport and watches closely as the soldier walks over to the second car, which holds Igor and two of his men. The soldier hands Igor Corpy's passport. Igor orders one of his men to step out of the car. The man walks past Corpy's truck, goes to the second soldier by the blockade, and coordinates something with him. Corpy instantly realizes he is about to be attacked and prepares for a fight. He watches the man approach him, holding a Molotov cocktail. Corpy waits until the man is right at his truck door, then violently kicks the door open, causing the Molotov to explode all over the man. Corpy throws the truck into reverse, running over the soldier standing behind him. He then slams the gas, dodges the other soldier's gunfire, rams and destroys the car blocking the road, and drags the soldier into his own truck. Korpi beats him relentlessly until he subdues him and takes his weapon. Igor begins trailing Korpi's truck but maintains his distance, knowing full well that Korpi is extremely intelligent and might set a trap. Suddenly, an armored vehicle appears and joins the chase against Korpi, revealing that Igor had anticipated Korpi would try to escape. After a while, Korpi stops his truck at a specific spot. Igor stops too, watching the situation unfold. 3 soldiers exit the armored vehicle, waiting for Korpi to show himself. A man jumps out of the truck and makes a run for it. The soldiers open fire immediately, gunning him down. But suddenly, they are shot and killed. Igor realizes this was Korpi's trick. The man who ran from the truck was actually the captive soldier. Korpi emerges and aims his weapon at Igor's car. Igor orders the man next to him not to move a muscle. Korpi shoots the car's tire, blowing it out. Igor's man loses his temper and tries to shoot Korpi, but before he can even react, Korpi shoots him dead center in the head. Korpi keeps his weapon trained on Igor, who remains perfectly still. Korpi lowers his gun, gets back into his truck, and drives away. Some time later, Igor is changing the blown tire when 4 soldiers on motorcycles arrive and join him. They speed off after Korpi's truck. One of the soldiers rides up close, and Korpi shoots him in the head, but the soldier is wearing a bulletproof helmet. The soldier draws his weapon and shoots Korpi, hitting him in the arm. Korpi's truck swerves off the road into a field, but he manages to regain control. He notices one of the soldiers has climbed onto the roof of his truck. The soldier fires at Korpi, but Korpi dodges swiftly, maneuvers the truck, and throws the soldier off the roof. At that moment, Igor arrives in his car, runs the soldier over, and kills him. Another soldier rides up to shoot Korpi, but Korpi rams his truck into a parked car on the side of the road, causing an explosion that kills the soldier instantly. The last 2 soldiers attack Korpi simultaneously. One of them manages to breach the cab and tries to throw Korpi out of the moving truck, while his partner tries to shoot him. Korpi disarms the shooter, throws the gun away, pulls a grenade, and jams it into the motorcycle's wheel. The grenade explodes, killing the rider. Korpi takes the last remaining soldier and ties him to the truck's winch hook, dragging him until his head is ripped from his body. Furious, Igor throws a grenade at Korpi's truck, setting the loaded timber on fire. Korpi retaliates by throwing the dead soldier's rigged body stuffed with grenades onto Igor's car. The massive explosion engulfs Igor's car, but he somehow survives. Igor grabs his radio and orders the backup plan to be executed. Meanwhile, Korpi drives his truck through the trees so the leaves will brush out the flames on the timber. He stops the truck, gives his dog some water, and pours water into the overheating radiator. Knowing he still has a long journey ahead, he sits down to rest for a moment. He checks the gunshot wound on his shoulder and is relieved it's superficial, but he is surprised to find a piece of shrapnel embedded in his cheek. He quickly pulls it out and throws it away. Suddenly, Korpi spots 2 fighter planes in the sky. He grabs his dog, jumps into the truck, and drives at maximum speed, knowing he's a sitting duck in the open fields. The planes unleash a storm of heavy gunfire, but Korpi swerves violently left and right, dodging the bullets until he spots an abandoned garage. He drives inside, stops the truck, and waits for the planes to circle back for another run. The planes return, strafing the garage and destroying large parts of it. This is exactly what Korpi wanted. He grabs a massive wooden plank to use as a shield over the truck and bursts out of the garage at full speed. At that very second, the planes drop bombs on the garage, obliterating it entirely. The planes fire at Korpi's truck, but the thick wooden plank absorbs the bullets. Korpi drives the truck deep into the forest, making it incredibly difficult for the planes to track him through the canopy. One of the pilots attempts a daring maneuver, flying extremely low to strafe Korpi's truck, but Korpi suddenly slams on the brakes. The plane's wing smashes into the truck, and the aircraft violently crashes and is destroyed. Korpi drives on calmly, waiting for the second plane to attack, but nothing happens. He continues until he reaches the edge of the forest, surprised to find the second plane has completely vanished without a trace. He drives out of the forest along the edge of a high mountain cliff. The plane suddenly appears flying right beside him. The pilot banks to face Corpy and shoot him, but is horrified to discover he is completely out of ammo. Enraged, the pilot decides to kamikaze the plane right into Corpy's truck. He dives the plane low and bails out just before impact. The Corpy executes a brilliant maneuver, stopping his truck at a precise angle and shooting the rope holding his timber. The rope snap, the massive logs slide down exactly in front of the truck, forming a ramp. The plane hits the logs, ramps right over the truck, and explodes far in the distance. The pilot parachutes down right in front of Corpy. Corpy begins reloading the timber onto his truck. The pilot pulls out his pistol and fires, but strangely misses every shot. The pilot is terrified and shaking, having never faced a warrior this incredibly fearless before. Corpy walks up to the pilot, fully intending to finish him off, but hesitates when he sees the pilot looking up at something and smiling. Corpy is shocked to see a third plane approaching. He sprints to his truck and drives off, passing the pilot, who gives him a mocking smile. But the pilot's smile instantly vanishes when he realizes his third plane is a heavy bomber, meaning it is about to carpet bomb the entire area. The plane drops a massive payload of bombs, completely obliterating the landscape. Corpy aggressively swerves his truck and drives straight off a cliff into the sea to escape the inferno. Submerged underwater, he opens the door and escapes with his dog. The Corpy swims back to untie the ropes on the timber so the wood can float to the surface. Suddenly, Corpy loses consciousness. His dog reaches the surface and swims around frantically looking for him. Moments later, Corpy breaches the surface. It turns out a large tree trunk dragged him up, allowing him to breathe. As soon as the dog sees him, it swims to him quickly. Some time later, Igor arrives at the cliff. He asks two of his men about Corpy, and they report that the truck sank to the bottom of the sea, and there is no trace of him. Meanwhile, we see Corpy having built a crude wooden raft, reaching the shore with his dog. As he walks, he stumbles upon an abandoned, rusted tank. He is thrilled to find it, and even more thrilled when he climbs inside and discovers it is fully loaded with explosives and weapons. He begins rigging the explosives to the outside of the tank, preparing himself for war, and drives toward the Finnish border. At the border gate, Igor is waiting with a squad of soldiers. They are absolutely stunned to see Corpy driving toward them in a tank, with his wooden timber strapped to the top of it. All the soldiers ready their weapons to fire, but Corpy has wired a massive amount of explosives to the rear of the tank. He lights the fuse and speeds toward the border gate. The force of the explosion blasts the entire tank up into the air, launching it over the gate and crashing down deep inside Finnish territory. Corpy is severely wounded from the blast. Still, he pushes his dog out of the tank and crawls out after it. The dog runs quickly into the forest. Corpy falls off the tank, paralyzed and unable to move. Igor approaches, ready to execute him, but Prick arrives with his men and orders Igor to take him alive. Igor agrees, holding off on killing Corpy, but viciously kicks him, knocking him unconscious. That night, Corpy wakes up to find himself chained by the hands inside a train car. Igor enters and gleefully confesses that he is the one who murdered Corpy's wife and children. He tells Corpy they brought his house's timber with them, and they are going to execute him right on top of it. Igor leaves. Corpy is consumed by an earth-shattering rage. He uses every ounce of his inhuman strength to rip himself from the chains until he finally breaks free, crashing to the floor. The guards hear the noise and look in, seeing him lying on the ground. They are so terrified of him that they hesitate to even enter. Finally, one of them builds up the courage, unlocks the door, and steps inside. Corpy immediately pulls a concealed blade from under his own skin. When the guard approaches, Corpy stands perfectly still. Suddenly, the second guard outside hears sounds of brutal violence inside the car. He rips the door open and is horrified to find Corpy standing over the dead guard. Terrified, the guard jumps off the moving train. Corpy then creeps into the next train car, where soldiers are sleeping. He moves in dead silence so no one wakes up. One of the soldiers gets up to use the bathroom. When he returns, he comes face to face with Corpy. Corpy moves like lightning, buries an axe in him, and kills him. Another soldier opens his eyes, screams in terror at the sight of Corpy, but Corpy flips the bed upwards, trapping the soldier, and stabs him repeatedly until he is dead, all without alerting the others. However, one sleeping soldier drops a glass bottle from his hand. It shatters, waking up several soldiers. Korpi moves with terrifying speed, exits the car, and jams the axe into the door handles, locking the soldiers inside. He looks into the next car and sees a squad of heavily armed soldiers. Korpi climbs onto the roof of the moving train and sprints across it, but he hits a metal pole and falls right into the armed soldiers' car. They raise their weapons to kill him, but Korpi is infinitely faster. He slaughters 2 of them in the blink of an eye, uses their corpses as meat shields, grabs their weapons, and massacres every single soldier in the car. Meanwhile, Igor is sitting with Prick and his men, demanding the money they agreed upon. Prick mocks him, telling him he will get his money, but first, they must celebrate. Suddenly, Igor hears gunfire. He steps out of the car to investigate, and is shocked to see bullets ripping through the doors of the train cars. He realizes Korpi has broken free. In a panic, Igor uncouples his car from the rest of the train. Korpi emerges, covered in blood, ready to kill Igor, only to find the train car pulling away as Igor waves at him mockingly. But Korpi notices a massive rocket mounted on his train car. He gets an idea and decides to execute it immediately. Igor walks back to Prick and his associates and murders them all, one by one. Meanwhile, Korpi ignites the rocket. The train car shoots forward at terrifying speed until it violently rams into Igor's car. Korpi launches himself inside, tackling Igor to the ground. A brutal, savage fight breaks out. Igor takes advantage of Korpi's severe injuries, gains the upper hand, beats him mercilessly, and throws Korpi completely off the train. Korpi lands right next to the rocket, which is still mounted to his detached train car. Igor appears, laughing and mocking Korpi, but Igor's face turns to absolute terror when Korpi tosses a massive metal nut right at his feet. Igor realizes Korpi just unbolted the rocket from its base. Igor runs for his life trying to escape, but the rocket fires off with terrifying speed. Korpi stands on the train car, watching the massive explosion as it annihilates Igor. The next day, we see soldiers from the Finnish army stationed at a railway station. They are stunned to see Korpi rolling in on the train car, hauling his salvaged timber. The moment they recognize him, a soldier immediately throws up a crisp military salute. Days later, we see Korpi rebuilding his house using the old wood he fought so hard to bring back. His dog is right there with him, visibly happy that Korpi is finally back. Korpi is surprised when a large group of local villagers approaches him. He tightly grips his axe to defend himself, but one of the men tells him they have come to help. The villagers spread out and begin working on the house together. Korpi is overwhelmed with emotion, and tears of pure happiness well up in his eyes. If you love thrilling plots like this, make sure to subscribe to Cinema Swift.